All right, this is the second video about minuets. We ended the previous video talking about Mozart, his Eine kleine Nachtmusik, and we looked at the minuet from his movement 3. So I'm going to continue on from here and talk about the form of the minuet. So listening to the Mozart, you should have noticed that there was two halves of that. And so the form of the minuet is in fact binary. Binary meaning there's two parts, okay? And if we represented this with letters, it's an A and a B, just like we have indicated there, okay? An A and a B. Now, the prototypical form of a minuet extends over 16 measures, organized in 2 symmetrical repeating periods. We've talked a lot about form in this class through the Harmony Through Melody textbook. And so in this case, we want the 2 halves to be equal, okay? And each of the halves have 8 measures. So we have a full 16 measures as a total, but we have 2 8 measures that repeat, okay? And so they're symmetrical in that way. They're both 8 measures long. In terms of the harmonic movement, if we're in major or minor, you start in the tonic. You always have to start on the primary tonic. You go to 5. Then in the second half, you might start on 5. You might start somewhere else. I just put the 5 there too, or the dominant. And then you return back to the primary tonic at the very end. So it's essentially starting in the tonic, moving to the dominant, maybe going somewhere else or staying in the dominant and returning back to the tonic, okay? Now, if you're in minor, you also have the option of going from the tonic to the relative major, and then somewhere else, again, maybe you go to 5 at this point, and then back to the primary tonic. There's also the option to be in the tonic for the first full 8 measures. You sometimes start this in a sequence, so maybe you have the first 8 measures start in the sequence, and then the second half can start anywhere, but you have, you've moved away from the tonic, and then you eventually end again with a perfect authentic cadence in the primary tonic. So you always begin and end in the tonic. In between, you have a few different options. You can start the second half with a sequence, but this is generally what happens. You move away from the tonic at some point, and you move back. Phrasing, I'm going to go into more detail in a later video, but the phrasing, it is very symmetrical. So there is a lot of, there's a lot of sort of doubling, right? So first we have a first half and a second half, that's 2. Then within those 8 measures, we can divide those 8 measures into 4 and 4, 4 and 4. So we could have just how we create the motives and how we create the melodic rhythm and the harmonic rhythm. It can be 4 and 4, but we can also subdivide that even further and to have them in subdivisions of 2. And you can combine them. So you could have one phrase that has a 4 and then 2 plus 2, or 2 plus 2 plus 4. But there is this real sort of hierarchy of phrasing that happens, but it's always very even: 2 and 2, 4 and 4, 2 plus 4, 2 plus 2 plus 4, and so forth. Okay, but again, I will go into more details about phrasing in a subsequent video. Now, there's different types of forms. There's a form called a rounded binary. And of course, as minuets progress and they got more sophisticated, they didn't always stick to these 8 measure pattern. They started getting expanded, as happened especially in the Romantic period. So what sometimes started happening was we had something called rounded binary. And what that means is we have an A section, then we have our B section, but the A part or all of the A section returns. Okay, so that is a rounded binary where you return back to the opening materials or the A section materials. The other kind of binary that you'll see in minuets is simple binary, and that's simply an A section that's repeated and a B section that's repeated. And this chapter really focuses more on that simple binary, just to keep the things simple, and to these 8 measure halves.